And a very good morning to you and welcome to K24 this morning. My name is Jeff Mote, of course, as always. If you're joining us for the first time on the show, what we do at this part is look at the big stories of the day right across your dailies and dig a bit deeper into the discussion that we're having in studio. I have a very able panel to take us through that discussion. That's coming up in just a bit. But let's set the stage for what we're discussing today. Now, the political landscape is shifting, and with it are the positions and coalitions that the politicians are taking. We might be having a BBI rumble from the mountain that the president wants to quiet, and a debt that the region is supposedly supposed to pay. But to who is the question. Also, what about the rest of the country and who will speak to their issues as these conversations gain more traction in the public discourse? Where is the case for development, and is it even possible to delink political rhetoric and development agenda as well? It's all about the place for development politics in the country. But first, as always, the newspaper headlines. Okay, let's start at the front page of your PD. We've spoken about political debts and promises being owed. Mount Kenya owes me political debt, says Raila. From 2002, let's scroll down and see this Kibaki Tosha declaration back to his father's independent support for Jomo. ODM leader says it's time for the region to return favor as he pitches for Building Bridges initiative as well as its 2022 State House contest. This is a story on page 6 of your People Daily. It's also covered in a couple of other papers this morning. You can get all the details of that particular story right there. Let's scroll on to the top part of the front page. All-out war as Kibicho now takes on Sonko. As you can see right there, it's been a war of words between Sonko and Kibicho. Kibicho says he's going to take this to court and actually accuses Governor Sonko of libel. You can see that particular story and get it on page 13 of your People Daily with all the details right there. But even as you look at this political intrigues, we still have a security issue in Kapedo. They're calling it the death trap for security officers. It's not a place for the faint-hearted, and even government knows as much as successive attempts to rein in the terrorist-like gangs have borne no fruit. This story is on page 8, and of course, it's all about the perennial issue of the attacks that take place in Kapedo and how to actually give it a long-lasting solution, even as the government grapples with this particular incident that's taking place in Kapedo at this particular point in time. But you can get that story in your copy of your People Daily as well. And by the way, just in case you didn't know, you can get your PD straight to your phone. It's only 10 shillings. The number that you dial is star 550 star 4 hash. Once again, it's star 550 star 4 hash. It's brought to you by the People Daily and Safaricom. Let's see what the Daily Nation has on its front page. You might need to, tighten your belts on this one. Inside the Tani's 3.02 trillion shilling budget, as they say, Kenyans should brace themselves for higher tax burden. As you can see right there, they're trying to just break down the numbers on where the expenditure will go as far as the 3.02 trillion shilling budget is concerned. And as they say right there, in keeping with the Jubilee administration's expansionary trend that now looks certain to push the country above the 9 trillion shilling debt ceiling, Treasury CS Ukur Yatani yesterday released the budget policy statement, which revealed that the huge expenditure outlay will leave the country with a massive deficit of about 1 trillion shillings to be funded through borrowing. So at a time where this might seem counterintuitive, where we actually should be tightening our belts and spending less, from this particular budget statement seems like we'll be spending more even after what has been experienced as far as COVID-19 and the effects on business and the economy as well. But you can find this story as well in your copy of your Daily Nation as a breakdown the numbers for you in that particular paper. Also, of course, in the Daily Nation, they're talking about the political debt right there. Raila says it's payback time for Mount Kenya. You can find that story in your copy of your Daily Nation as we talk about that. Let's see what the Standard has this morning. Same story right there, front and center. Quote, "You owe me a debt," unquote. In a renewed charm offensive for President Uhuru's backyard, ODM leader Raila Odinga tells the region it owes him a big political debt accumulated over the last 57 years by Kenya's 3 presidents, and now it's time to repay, it seems. This story is on page 6 of your Standard. You can get all the details of that right there, even as you look at those particular intrigues as far as this region is concerned. Finally, let's look at the front page of the Star. As you look at this right there, Kenyatta plans Sagana Forum to tame Ruto wave. Follows widening cracks in his central backyard over BBI process. President to meet Kenya's leaders, of course, at Sagana on Saturday to try and bring this to fruition. You can find this story as well on page 4 and 5 of your Star this morning. Also in your Star, Yatani's tough, let's scroll back up. Yatani's tough balancing act as he unveils 3 trillion shilling budget. So really, those are the two big stories right now, of course, even as we move closer to budget season on that particular issue. And the budget statement, budget policy statement also ready. This story can be found on page 14 of your Star. All the details are therein, of course, as always. So that's what you're waking up to this morning. Talk of political debt from the Mount Kenya region, but also economically, it's all about tightening your belt because higher taxes might be coming your way if indeed this particular 3 trillion shilling budget is passed. So that's what you're waking up to this morning. But right now, it's all about development politics. How do you even have that conversation? Welcome to K24 this morning. Welcome back. So that's a discussion we're having today. Is there a place for development politics? How does it even take place? That's what we need to break down and see how we can actually have that discussion taking place. In studio, joined by Jonathan Mweke. He's a Secretary General, United Green Movement Party. Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know we're late into January, but this is your first time on the show. Is it still in order to say Happy New Year?
Yes, it is.
It is?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Happy New Year, Jonathan, and welcome to the show.
Happy New Year to you, Jeff.
Asante
and thank you so much for having me.
Asante Sana. Thanks for making time to be on the show as well. Joining the conversation virtually, we have a communication strategist. He's also an author, by the way. He reminded me that this morning. Mark Bichachi, always joining the show virtually. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, and thanks for remembering that I am published.
Thanks for being on the show as well. Asante Sana for making time. So even as we talk about this, of course, we love it on your part of the conversation. You can get me at I am Jeff Mote on Twitter. You can also get me at K24 TV as we discuss the pertinent issues of the day. Because how do you really have this conversation of development and delink it from politics? That's what we want to talk about right here. Also joining this conversation is Executive Director at the East Africa Center for Law and Justice, Joy Mdivo. Good morning, Joy.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Very well. Karibu sana, and thanks for making time to be here.
Asante.
Before we talk about development politics, this also ties into that because we've seen a real charm offensive going on at the mountain, you know, and lots has been happening. There are lots of action taking place. Previously, there was talk of no debts being owed to anyone. This conversation has come up now, but the person claiming this debt is Raila Odinga, Joy. What's your take on this?
If you are an observer of Kenyan politics, you know how much it has taken for Honorable Raila Odinga to actually join the handshake and maintain the handshake for the last few years as he has done. It's not been something that has come easy. He has paid a price. He has had to lose some, let's call it street cred. There's some street credibility that he used to have that he had to lose. There are some of his followers who felt betrayed that he decided to go the handshake route rather than the agitation that they were going for with the resist and all those other things that we're seeing at the time. So for him to have done that, it must have been a sacrifice. And he's feeling like, you know what, for me to have bent over backwards for you at that time, now this is time for you to do the same for me. So from my perspective, when I saw the headlines, I was like, you know what, it is expected. He could not have done all this for nothing. I mean, in politics, there's nothing. It's not charity.
Right.
Everything you're doing is building up to something.
Right.
And one thing you must give ODM as a party, they are very meticulous. They are organized. They have strategy. They have long-term plans. They look beyond today. And remember at the beginning at the handshake, even some of the ODM legislators were not behind the idea. But once as a party they decided that that was their strategy, they became more government than Jubilee. And they got to a place where even people were making fun of them. I was part of the guys who were making fun of them, like, hey, surely you're more government than the Serikal itself. So if they feel that this is their turn to collect, it's not something that is unexpected. But like you said, the politics of debt is one of those things that I find to be a little bit unfortunate, because what you presume is that people are your own personal chattel, that you can trade as you want. That if I sit here, don't just see Joy, see the 200,000 people that I'm carrying in my bag somewhere, like Dora the Explorer. Our politicians need to come to a place where they need to understand servant leadership means it's not just quote unquote what you bring to the table, it is what you're offering to the people that you're leading. So this talk of debt, no debt, in political populace we understand it, but as an ideology, I think it's something as a society we need to break away from, so that everybody works for their space, earns their space, and they earn it by virtue of how they perform rather than boardroom deals.
Jonathan, when he says this to a region, of course it colors the perception of how they'll take the BBI process that they're still trying to take this charm offensive to. What does this mean for the palatability of BBI, not only to this region, but the country at large, when you hear people talking about, you owe me, so please pass this because there's a debt that needs to be paid and a debt of over 50 years from Raila?
Yeah. I think it's a little unfortunate because we are beginning to propagate exactly what the handshake was telling us not to, or what the handshake was supposed to solve. Inclusivity. Making sure that we are one united Kenya. This story of this region and that region owes me, or now it's this region's time, or these other regions have served for too long, so now they can't serve anymore, you have to give it to another region. I think it's taking us a little behind as a country. Why do I think that? Because really, it's not debt that does the work. We are trying as citizens to move forward. We are trying as citizens to ensure that we can take our children to school, that we can have a livelihood and enjoy our lives, that we can go to a hospital and we get sick and actually get treated, that our economy grows so that our young population can get jobs. And then our leaders are saying, no, I voted for your tribe, so now it's your turn it's your tribe's turn to vote for me. I think it's being retrogressive, and I think the Honorable Raila Odinga is not being very honest with Kenyans. We are a democracy by constitution, and we've learned to be a democracy because, I mean, the same Raila Odinga fought for this democracy for so long. And democracy means, and it is also enshrined in our constitution, in Article 38, that everybody has a right to make their own political choices. Everybody has a right to vote. That democracy has given us as individuals to sit down and look at our leaders and ask our leaders, what is it you're offering for our country to move forward? What is it you're offering for my life to become better? And then I decide as an individual, not as a tribe or a region or a community, whether you're the best person to lead us into success, right? Now we are taking it backward and we are saying, if you're in Mount Kenya, because you've had a president for so many times, all of a sudden you're not eligible to run for presidency. It doesn't matter how good you are or what you can do or the great ideas you have for this country. You're just not allowed to run because you're Kikuyu or Kalenjin and you've already held positions before. I think it's completely unfair, and I think we are giving ourselves as Kenya the short end of the stick.
Mark, I'll come to you on this one as well, because if we go down this rabbit hole and actually speak about, political debt, let's not forget, in the full glare of cameras and in public, the president did say, 10 years for me, 10 years for my DP. Should we be listening to that and give credence to that? If we're going to talk about debt, we heard it from the person who's at the helm of the country. Should we then support his deputy if it's about paying debts politically?
I like that, because Kenyan politics is full of very foolish ideas. There was ideas like Tialala, there was ideas like Tibim, there was ideas like Kumira, there is Wembe ni ule, kuna lipa deni. We have such stupid, silly rhetoric in this country that unfortunately our politicians love to push. Now, let me tell you why this ideology that we keep pushing over and over again is silly. To be honest with you, I do not know how Uhuru could promise 10 years president. He has one vote like me. And the same that is quite false for Raila to go and say that he's also owed a debt. And of course, Ruto also says he's owed a debt, as though when we fought, there's something that we are getting from them other than that which is legal. So that ideology is false, should be rejected wholesale, and our politicians go to the marketplace and sell not just ideas but executable ideas, because a lot of the time we've learned over the last few elections will be promised things that are more far-fetched than the castles I used to build sitting outside the barber shop. They will never happen, and they will never see the light of day. But secondly, it's something that we must be careful about. That Kenya is a nation that has been prone to tribal violence many a time. In fact, even last year we had tribal clashes in this country. And I need to remind my nation that if it affected us, when Barack Obama, who we claimed as one of our own, rose to the presidency in the United States, if the Black community celebrated his presidential win all those years back, then we must also be aware that in as much as we want to talk about ideas, and I believe we should stick there, we cannot forget that Kenya has an ethnic stand towards its politics. And it is not wrong to debate how to solve that ethnic animosity. Sweeping it under the rug and saying that ideas is all that counts is trying to deny that we have a history in this country of tribal violence. We have a history of tribal acrimony. And one of the things that we must do is to have continuous conversation, because that is how peace is brought, by having continuous conversation about how to solve the issues of tribalism, solve the issues of inclusion, solve the issues how every nation tribe represented in this country can feel like they're part of the equation. I did a trip to Mandera the other day, and I can tell you, the people of Mandera for a long time have felt developmentally excluded from Kenya. And you remember the age-old joke that used to say when they're coming from Turkana or Mandera, saying tukienda Nairobi wanasema wanaenda Kenya. So these are issues that we do need to solve. Let's not sweep them under the rug. It does not make anyone a tribalist by them saying that we need to talk about tribal unity. It's such a serious issue. We have an entire commission dedicated to that. So I think we need to separate the politics from tribe, but we also need to discuss the issues of tribe in terms of trying to build a more harmonious nation. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Jonathan, even as you talk about the tribal politics that is Kenyan, you know, at times they say politicians lie or not. What we do know, numbers usually don't lie. And when you talk about a scenario where we are neck deep in debt as a country at this particular point in time, want to extend the debt ceiling, is it too much to have politicians actually speak to that issue, to the debt that actually concerns the 47 million Kenyans, as opposed to political debt? Because as we stand right now, it's a big story on all our front pages, you know, inside the budget policy statement that Yatani is about to give. And this definitely affects development. It affects what will happen in Mandera, what will happen in Kisumu and Mombasa, save Mount Kenya as well. Why is it so hard for politicians to speak to this, the issues that actually affect the everyday Kenyan?
And it's what Mark is talking about. We are not issue-based. And that's why we continue to retrogress. And a question that we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans every time before we go into an election is, are we better off than the last time? Are we better off since the last election? And if we are not, that usually is a signal that you need to change. And I think, Jeff, we really need to start thinking about how we can have a paradigm shift in our politics so that our politics can be people-centered. Yeah? I looked at the headlines this morning about 3.02 trillion budget. And the first thing that could come into my mind was, okay, 730 of it is going to be stolen. 2 billion shillings a day times 365 billion shillings. Wait a minute, but the person who's saying the money is stolen is our head of government. What is being done about this stealing money? And if you look at yourself or your business or even your own pocket, yeah, if you keep making money and it keeps getting stolen, at one point you're going to stop and say, wait a minute, how do I stop this leakage?
Right.
How can I stop money from being stolen before I allocate any more? But what we are seeing in Kenya is the more money you steal, the more you go and borrow to plug the hole for what you are stealing. So you get into a vicious cycle, and we'll get to a point where your budget is even 5 trillion shillings, but we are not seeing development.
Right.
Because you're stealing, you're borrowing to steal. Yeah, and it just goes into a black hole and out of the country into foreign accounts somewhere in other countries. Yeah. So I think we need to sit down as a people and begin to ask ourselves, these politicians don't give themselves jobs. We give them those jobs. Yeah. And they're asking us for the jobs based on a political debt that doesn't help my life, that doesn't help your life, that doesn't help our children's lives or Wananchi's lives. And that's where I think there's a disconnect. The disconnect is there is no accountability for our political class. Politicians are supposed to represent us as the Wananchi. When they go to parliament, they're supposed to be talking about our issues. Our issues right now are not political debt. Our issues right now are not even BBI. Our issues right now as a country, surveys have been done, data is available, statistics are available for anybody to analyze. Our issues are Kenya is in an economic crisis. People have lost jobs. There is no money in people's pockets. People can't educate their children. Children are learning under trees. People can't get medicine when they go to hospital. We're in the biggest pandemic in 100 years. Every day we have people dying of corona. Doctors don't have PPEs. They are on strike. Those are our priorities as a country. But the people we have elected have a different priority. Their priority is let's change the constitution to give ourselves jobs, right? There's a very serious disconnect. If you have a business, for example, and I keep going back to business because I'm an entrepreneur, the first thing you do as a business is you understand your customers' needs. And then you set your business up to meet your customers' needs and solve their problems. Then your business is successful. In government, it's your citizen, Wananchi. Wananchi anataka nini? Kama anataka maji, mpatie maji. Kama anataka kazi, mtafutie kazi. Yeah? And that's how governments should operate. But here you're having us in an economic crisis, but our entire leadership, or half of it, is talking about let's change the constitution to give ourselves jobs. There's a disconnect. We are having a budget that we can't even finance ourselves. You know, the nation says financing deficit. We need to go and borrow to finance this budget. Now, 30% of it is going to be stolen. The one that remains, instead of developing, you're going to do things that Kenyans don't care about. So where are your priorities? So we remain in that vicious cycle where we are spending so much money. We are borrowing money to continue spending it in things that don't matter to Kenyans, and then we wonder why we are not developing as a country. So I think that's where the disconnect is, and as Wananchi, we have to be accountable so that as we are voting for people that we know will take our agenda forward.
Joy, is it too much to expect politicians to get on the stage and actually speak about and speak to these particular issues? How do we move this conversation there and away from the tialalas and the T-beams and the political debt rhetoric, so that by the time you want to vie for an office wherever, you do know, when you get on that stage, Kenyans really want to know what you'll do concerning the debt and how their businesses will be restarted. How do you move that conversation there?
Kenyans are the ones who will determine what they hear by how they respond. If there's one thing that politicians have learned to do in Kenya, is to tell us what we need, what we want to hear. If people come and all they're talking about is the T-beam, the tialala, the kumira, and you're fascinated by it, they'll keep giving you more of that. But if you start T-beam and people turn and walk away, tomorrow you'll find out, hey, what else should I say? We have made politics a national pastime. It's a big misfortune. We need to come to a place where, even as the citizens, we start demanding more of ourselves, more of our leaders, such that if I am a grown-up person with a sane mind and a politician is passing by, sitting on top of his four-wheel drive, when he starts talking, if he's not talking anything that I'm interested in, you simply deny them audience, because politicians need those crowds to thrive. That's what they're looking out for. How do we change the conversation? Is by how we react. When our leaders tell us things that we do not appreciate, we just simply stop listening to them. One thing then they'll have to do is find out what messaging will work for the people of Kenya. That's one. Secondly, we also have to start demanding more of ourselves than we do with our leaders. So for example, if the pastor who was preaching over the weekend was saying, Kenyans are like thieves without an opportunity. We ourselves are a reflection of our leaders. We also have to start upping our game in our normal life. So for example, if I go to a market, and because I don't speak the local language that the people are speaking, when I ask for something, I'm told it's 20 shillings. But when somebody who speaks the local language comes, they're told it's 5 shillings. We are a problem. We are a reflection of what we get. But I like the question that you asked Brian Ali, Mweke Ali, about what are we going to do about, our leaders are talking about a debt to each other. Here we have another debt, and we're not talking about the same debt. That's another conversation as a country we need to have. We're coming at a place where counties are having a cash crunch. We are talking like we have a healthy economy, but it is not translating into money in the pocket. I think those who've studied a little economics, and I'm not one of them, give the analogy. If you're running a business and you do not have cash flow, it's like slitting your wrists. But if you've got assets that can help you tide you along, it's like a cancer, because you know you can keep pushing it along because you've got something to convert. But if you come to a place where there's nothing flowing, you start hemorrhaging. Before long, the business dies. We have to find a way of keeping the cash flowing within our economy. That's something that has been a big problem, because if we look at the numbers, our economy is growing. If we look at the national indicators, the international indicators, Kenya is a strong economy. But ask the Mwananchi on the street, they don't get to feel it. So what our leaders say is debt, because them they're saying, by the way, the other big indicators were good. So let's talk about this other one, because that's important. Mwananchi down here is translating it differently. Okay. We need to also come to a place where we start singing from the same song sheet. So for example, one of the criticisms I've had with our Jubilee government is because we have been very good on macro projects. The big stuff, we do that really well. But sometimes those fine details, those things that actually affect the man on the ground, we are not very good at that. And what that translates to is people feeling like y'all are having it good. It is progressing for you, but for us, we are stuck in the mud. So the conversation I think the Kenyans need to demand of their leaders is, how do we all feel this $100 million economy? How does it feel for all of us? Okay.
I want us to take a break at this particular point in time. Of course, after the break, I also look at your views. You can get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. It's all about moving the political discourse, the political discussions we're having to development and matters that actually affect you and me. Because from what we're seeing right now, it's political debts that are owed to the politicians. How do you get your debt paid? We discuss that after the break.